Hi, I'm Pete Miller, President and CEO of the Institutes. We're a global not-for-profit whose mission is to educate, elevate, and connect the people focused on risk management and insurance. You're listening to Predict and Prevent, a podcast that explores how technology and resiliency can prevent losses before they occur. In each episode, we learn about innovative solutions and hear from leading experts on how they are making these approaches a reality today. Aside from natural catastrophes, there are still plenty of perils affecting personal and commercial property that will benefit from Predict and Prevent. Fires, water damage, lightning, tornadoes, theft, just to name a few. Smart home and smart building technologies offer a way to predict risks, prevent them from becoming losses, and mitigate damage. Is this an area where insurers are likely to make their first big Predict and Prevent bets? Let's find out in this episode. To explore today's topic, I'll be sitting down with two guests who know all about this. First, I'm sitting down with George Chedraoui, Senior Director of Corporate Risk and Resilience for Highwoods Properties Inc. Highwood is based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and owns a portfolio of office buildings throughout the Sun Belt, with about 175 properties and 28 million square feet. Risk management and resilience is central to the company's business strategy, creating value for shareholders and customers. George joined Highwoods in 2009. Previously, he worked for IBM as a global leader of well-being and health benefit. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial Engineering from Penn State University. During our conversation, George shared the strong success they are having through the use of Internet of Things sensors provided by its insurance partner, Chubb Group. George had some great insights to share about how risk managers and insurers can effectively collaborate on Predict and Prevent. Well, George, I'm very interested in what you do, and I'm very grateful for your time here today. Tell us a little bit about Highwoods Properties and what you do there.
Sure. Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Pete. I function as the Senior Director for Risk and Resilience. That's kind of a fancy word for being the risk manager, among some other things. Highwoods Properties is a real estate investment trust. It is a REIT. We own and operate commercial office properties, primarily in the Sun Belt. We own about 175 properties comprising a little over 28 million square feet.
As I was doing research for this, I was very fascinated. I know that you work with Chubb to learn about your IoT sensor program. So, George, could you just give us a quick overview of that and what is it? How are you using it? Are you planning to expand it? And if so, when and how are you going to do that?
Sure. Well, Chubb has been a terrific partner of Highwoods for the last 10 plus years. They have been a key player in our risk and resiliency program. They have helped improve many of the programs that we are enjoying at the moment, through their loss control, through their claims, through, better underwriting. I think we have become a more resilient organization, primarily, due to that partnership that we've enjoyed with Chubb. When Chubb came to us maybe about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and introduced this IoT technology to us, as they started describing what the program does and what it entails and what the capabilities are, I really got very, very excited. And we, Highwoods, historically has never been afraid to make investments and to get out of our comfort zone and explore, new ideas. And then, in Highwoods fashion, we jumped right in. And we did a pilot initially, with 5 large assets. These 5 buildings comprised about, 3 million square feet or so. We just wanted to kind of test the waters to see how this technology works, perhaps get the kinks out of them. It was supposed to be kind of just a 1-year pilot before deciding whether to go forward or not. But to be honest with you, after about 4 or 5 months of experimenting with this technology, we found it to be so beneficial and of such value that we accelerated the adoption to the point now where we have it across over 55 properties comprising roughly 55 to 60% of our square footage. So we're very excited about that.
And do you see that expanding into the future?
Absolutely. So what we're calling, phase one comprises these 55 buildings. Those are the larger urban type buildings. And the reason we chose those to be in phase one is, it was fairly obvious that the potential for loss was much, much higher than in those smaller suburban type buildings. When you have a water leak that occurs on the 15th or 20th or 40th floor of a building, it doesn't take a whole lot, for a simple leak to turn into a major disaster. So we wanted to focus on the larger buildings because that's where the greatest potential for loss was. And the solution, the technology seemed simple enough that, without, any major retrofits to our existing properties, we were able to, simply adopt this technology, without really making any significant capital improvements to our properties.
So it sounds like the rollout is pretty simple, a pretty simple installation and pretty simple rollout. No big process changes, nothing.
And that's the beauty of this. The only thing you need is a 120 volt outlet for the gateway to go in, but all the sensors that connect to that gateway are wireless. So you can literally put them anywhere, any location where there's a potential for water to leak or to exist where water shouldn't exist. It's painless, and that's really what's exciting about this: the simplicity and the efficiency and the low cost of implementation. Is these are all huge benefits of this program.
So no real barriers to overcome. Everybody agrees and adopts and all that good stuff, George?
There are obviously some things that, companies need to consider, and we're no different. There are, some kinks that needed to be worked out. There's some training that we needed to do for our old folks. There are some, education classes that we had to do with our supply chain and our vendors, specifically our security staff and our janitorial staff. So one of the things that we were concerned about, and this is coming from our property managers and our building engineers out in the field, they were a little bit concerned about, having false alarms, where, they're getting that signal, that alarm or that bell at, 2:00 in the morning on a Friday or a Saturday. So they were a little bit hesitant at first. But, we did this pilot, and luckily we had very little, very few false alarms, mainly because, we prepared our security staff, we prepared our janitorial staff, and, the risk was there, like what happens when a janitorial person is mopping the floor, purposely putting water on the floor, and then those sensors picked up that mop. We were concerned that there would be, an awful lot of those types of false alarms that would have kind of created, some pushback from our folks in the field. But again, it's an ongoing thing, through ongoing training with our folks and with our supply chain, we're able to drastically reduce the error rate or the false alarms. It's not down to zero by any means, and I don't think it'll ever be down to zero just because of the nature of how, property management is operated. But I think we have it down to a manageable situation.
Sounds like it's been really successful implementation. So can you give us examples of how the program has benefited you, prevented losses, helped your customers and that stuff?
Of course. Well, I see the reports. They come to me regularly. Most recently, and this is really a success story, we in part of our phase one installation, one of our flagship buildings here in Raleigh, we had a third floor supplemental HVAC unit that belonged to one of our retail customers. It's a restaurant right below it. And the drain pipe on that HVAC supplemental unit, which again belongs to our customer in the building, clogged up. Typically, if we did not have that sensor in there, water would have simply seeped down from the third floor to the second floor to the first floor. That's how, water finds the path of least resistance, so to speak. Luckily, 2 days earlier, Chubb had come to town and they helped us, with the installation of this one building. And we had a sensor right there and then. And what do you know? The sensor picked up the leak right away. Our building engineer got the signal, and he was fortunately right there in the building. This otherwise would have been like a $25,000 property damage loss, and we prevented it. It was virtually a non-event. So that, we consider that a huge success story.
So you touched on it a little bit, but sort of ROI, it's from a business perspective, right? I think we try to cover predict and prevent from a lot of different angles. But for your business, that's maybe an example, but can you give us other examples, like who pays for this program, first of all, and then how do you calculate, the ROI, whether it's really worth it?
When you look at the sector that we're in, commercial offices, our buildings tend to be fairly resistant to natural disasters. Basically we're dealing with, concrete and steel structures. Yes, we have glass curtain walls and things like that. But, generally speaking, those types of assets, are very well constructed. They tend to be fairly resilient against most perils. The one peril that kind of trumps all of this is water and the plumbing leaks that come from within the building. And historically, we've always kind of assumed, well, geez, yes, you've got a, 40-story building, 1 million square feet, with a lot of, water sources inside the building. Chances are things will happen. We've kind of assumed that, there are some things that are within our control and others that are outside of our control. In this particular case, we obviously believe that we can control that peril. We can control that risk. When you look at our 10-year history, by and large, the most frequent type of loss and the most costly type of loss has been plumbing water leaks within the building. So when we look at the ROI, it's really not that difficult from a direct financial comparison of how much we're paying for those sensors, which is fairly nominal, really a nominal cost compared to simply preventing one loss. Preventing one loss in a high-rise building will more than pay for the entire program. So that's kind of the direct, ROI. But for us, we're not doing it to get the ROI. We're doing it because of our customers in our buildings. We love our customers. They are the lifeblood of Highwoods. And when an incident occurs inside our buildings that creates disruption for our customers, we take that personally. To the extent that we can do something about that disruption and mitigate that risk and create a business continuity plan that allows, the customer to continue to occupy their space without, interruptions from their space, obviously, that's a huge differentiator for Highwoods. So yes, we do it for the ROI on one side, but really, and this is something that comes down from our senior leadership team, including our CEO, anything that we can do to keep our customers happy, that is by far our number one driver for this technology.
So it sounds like ROI is a measure, but there are other maybe even as important measures to Highwoods.
Maybe even more important. If you start losing customers because they're not happy with you, well, that's not sustainable.
So oftentimes people go, well, I can do this myself. I can work with my insurer. You decided to work with Chubb on this. So could you just talk for a little bit about the specific benefits of working with your insurer as opposed to maybe trying to do this on your own?
Sure. Well, for one thing, for selfish reasons, I'm kind of a one-man department, so to speak. It's like I'm the risk manager, but I have 350 coworkers out in the field, that help me. So being, kind of a single person department, I couldn't really do this on my own, for one thing. So I needed the help of Chubb, to be honest with you. Secondly, when Chubb, came to us with this proposal, with this technology, it certainly resonated with me because it sounded, it sounded like, it fit within, our operation, within our culture. And it was kind of almost like a turnkey solution. They were the experts in this. We've had several meetings and then conference calls and then WebExes to kind of go through the whole technology and the solution so that I in turn can sell it. So they were extremely helpful in being that sounding board and being the technical advisor to me so that I can help sell that program internally to our folks in the field. And that was a huge benefit. So, again, I really couldn't do this on my own. We needed someone like Chubb to help kind of pave the way. And thirdly, look, let's face it. I mean, I'm dealing with their underwriters on almost a daily basis. So it certainly doesn't hurt to have that conversation with the underwriters, say, hey, by the way, we're engaged, with your IoT solution on this end. And I think, there's certainly some synergies and some benefits from that perspective.
So kind of an existing relationship where you can implement something that not difficult from a cultural point of view, an organizational point of view, and you already have the relationship established.
That's right.
That everybody wins at. Pretty good story, George. George, you're a leader in this area. I mean, your foresight and real-time intervention, right? That's a bit different, but starting to be something that we're seeing. And obviously at the Institutes, we think predict and prevent is just a great thing going forward. So as somebody who's done this kind of on the vanguard, if you will, what advice or words would you share with risk managers who might be thinking about doing similar initiatives?
Well, I would certainly advise them to look at your portfolio in a holistic fashion. Many of my peers they seem to be more concerned about, the hurricanes and the fires and then the things that, will gain, kind of, media attention. When a plumbing leak occurs in a property, it's not likely to make the news, so maybe it tends to be a little bit less, you get less publicity on it. But from a loss perspective, those are really the loss drivers. Again, for an office operator like we are, plumbing leaks tend to be the biggest loss drivers for us. So this is huge. So I certainly would advise every property owner to look at their risk holistically and not just focus on the big items. Secondly, don't be afraid to make investments in new technologies. It's kind of in our DNA that, we're willing to step out of our comfort zone and experiment with something. And if you are concerned, you can take baby steps like we did. We did a 5-building pilot. Do a pilot. Take some time to study the results and the impact and make some decisions from there. The other thing for us is there's a thought that perhaps these things may be uncontrollable, that, a lot of things are beyond your control, especially if you've got customers, tenants for other folks, we call them customers. How can you control a customer, who's, installing a coffee machine in their break room or whatever? Well, in fact, we had these conversations with our customers, and they were thrilled to know that Highwoods was partnering with our customers to mitigate not only our loss, but their loss. So it's one of those deals where it's really a win-win-win. It's a win for us as property owners. It's a win for our customers in that it minimizes damage to their property, and it's a win for Chubb. So it's a great partnership.
A great partnership, and certainly one that your leadership was instrumental in creating. So, George, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you kind of giving us a view of tomorrow today with the things that you've done and with your forward-looking way on controlling and predicting and preventing. So we're really grateful for your time, grateful for your efforts. Appreciate you taking time to share with us today.
Thank you, Pete. My pleasure.
George had great insights on how working with an insurance partner can have advantages for a risk manager and improve resiliency against potential losses. In this segment, I sit down with Sean Ringsted, an expert who has more than 25 years of experience in the insurance industry. We discuss how Chubb is working with clients like Highwoods to successfully deploy IoT sensors to gain real-time risk insights that can protect against losses. Sean is the Executive Vice President of Chubb Group, as well as the organization's Chief Digital Business Officer. As leader of Chubb's 100% digital business unit, he's responsible for overseeing revenue, products, and capabilities with partners, including digitally native platforms and financial institutions. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in biochemistry from Bristol University and a doctorate in biochemistry from Oxford University. He's a fellow of the Institute of Actuaries, and he also serves as the chair of the Institute's Risk Stream Advisory Board. Well, Sean, I really appreciate you taking time today to talk to us about something I know you've been involved with for quite some time and have certainly been an industry leader on, and that's predict and prevent. So, Sean, how about before we get started, we just give us a little background on Sean, how you got into this and how you kind of got interested in predict and prevent.
I guess my path has always been heavily intertwined with actuarial science, risk management, data, technology. So a lot of roads lead to IoT and predict and prevent. And I guess the real appeal, I think, and the power of it is being able, historically, right, we're so used to aggregate information, aggregate data in the industry and lagging data. And that's not really necessarily, and we try and attribute something to that, right? It's not necessarily relevant to actually what happened. And so now, right, through the data and the analytics and the tech, you arrive at IoT and something that's scalable, affordable, and it works. And being able to now offer you some real-time insight, right, around exposure, I think is just incredibly compelling.
If we sort of focus in on how Chubb has been using IoT and predict and prevent, can you just tell me sort of the landscape as Chubb sees it for IoT and you know I know that you acquired StreamLabs in 2021 and a little bit about that as well.
Sure, happy to. I mean, just high level, and we can jump into the technical details. And I think on your last segment, you may have had one of our clients, right, George Chedraoui from Highwoods, sharing their success. And you know, it's been fabulous working with George and the team on Highwoods on their installation. They've got a great story, but I mean, they're just a great example, I think, of a team that's implementing their risk management strategy with the use of IoT sensors and real-time alerts, right? Of just before little problems become big problems, right? Highwoods is a great client example of that, and we have a large number now, growing number of clients that are taking this on. And so today, I mean, we have literally billions, tens of billions of dollars in insured properties that are being protected by sensors. These sensors, right, they're installed in both commercial and personal properties. And we've got numerous examples now of saves, what we call saves to us, right? So we're preventing claims, right? And they could have potentially resulted in millions of dollars in damage, right, if left undetected. And you mentioned StreamLabs. So we acquired StreamLabs a couple of years back. Very, very pleased with that acquisition. And they're a provider of IoT enabled smart valves and water leak detectors. And we continue to see a strong uptick in interest for residential and small business use. And I think for Chubb, and I think it's the same for the industry, water damage is one of the top drivers of claims, right? And the frequency of cost of those losses continue to increase. And I don't think it's just the dollar amount associated with it, right? We can all picture the huge inconvenience, right? If you're now having to clean up after a water loss, I mean, think mold, right? Repairing the carpet, having to find alternative premises and so on. So, I mean, the inconvenience around that is extraordinary. So it really just underscores the value proposition, which is, you know, through IoT, right? They can detect a water leak, they can detect a change in temperature or a change in humidity. That just helps predict losses before they occur and hopefully prevent them from happening in the first place.
You gave us some of the technical details of the IoT program. Can you give us a little bit more on what that looks like from your perspective?
Technical can cover a broad, you know, it's a pretty big umbrella, right? But if you just bucket it in terms of, you think hardware, you think the software, and the analytics, right? So in terms of the hardware itself, I mean, we offer a whole home automatic shutoff device and a full sensor system. So the shutoff devices and the sensor system, we have proprietary software, and that helps detect and alert for a range of potential issues. So think water leaks, and as mentioned, temperature changes and the humidity. Humidity is important, right? With as you think about mold. So this whole home automatic device, that's really useful in a single family home, a vacation home. Think secondary home as well, right? Where the homeowner's not around to attend to a water leak. So that's very powerful. And then we have a full sensor system, and that's deployed in a commercial setting. So think a large college or a school campus, hospital, or life science. And we're deploying water sensors, and these are smaller than a size of a hockey puck, and they have a tail that lies on the floor, and that can detect water anywhere on the length of the tail. And point of link sensor or spot sensors where water could be detected in specific areas of the building, and you place these in strategic, or you may say obvious areas where you could have a water leak. So think a boiler room or a laundry area. There's sinks, sprinkler systems, right? And then you adjust them a little bit for sensitivity. But when it's up and running, the sensors will send alerts to the cell phone. So the risk manager will get the alert on the cell phone in real time. And we also interestingly provide live and historical water flow data with a usage chart. And starting to see some interest here in other uses, right? It's not just water leak, but businesses and homes that are thinking about water consumption. So these usage charts also have a very interesting purpose. The sensors are battery operated, they're wireless, portable, and you've got a life of between 3 to 5 years. So easy to install, and plumbers, you don't need the plumbers on these sensors. But we also deploy what we call flow-based devices, which are installed by a plumber, because here you're going in on the water line, and these will automatically shut off water if there's unusual flow detected. And so those will typically, right now, we'll install them in single family homes. And from a technical point of view, they're pretty interesting. They send ultrasonic sound waves, and those waves record the flow of the water that measure the water consumption and unusual flow to detect potential problems. So for both the auto shutoff device and sensor, you're sending this data real time to the StreamLabs app. So that's the software, and that's sort of the client interface. We do it through an app. And so the client has got very, very good control, right? They know what's happening. It's protecting their home, their business 24/7. To help with that protection, right, we're obviously putting a team around this. So we've got dedicated risk engineering and IoT professionals to help provide consultation and the installation support. So that's very helpful for the homeowner. But what we found for the risk manager, right, it's really empowering them. They get the alert, they go there, and they can take the preventative action. So we found it to be very empowering for our risk management clients.
In your experience, are there specific categories or industries that are benefiting most from this program?
All industries and all size of occupancies will benefit, right? I mean, the sensor offerings will span clients of all sizes, right? And so we've done it all from a coffee shop where you put in 5 sensors to these really large college campuses that have hundreds and hundreds of sensors to private residencies. And so, yeah, it's very, very extensible, right? Wherever you go, you think about water damage being a problem, and you think about a campus, and particularly during COVID, right? The risk managers started to call these sort of part of their team, right? Because you don't have to patrol large sections, or you couldn't with COVID, right? But you've got these sensors that are there 24/7, monitoring to hospitals and protecting important equipment in hospitals, to office buildings, to hotels, to warehouses. And we've even got private wine collections that we're protecting. So maybe we could come and take a look at yours one day, Pete.
From an adoption perspective, what have you found in terms of best practices so that you have the best chance of success from that program?
clearly, I mean, there's the conversation always starts, right, with learning how the technology works, and then calibration, then being thoughtful about where you put them. We've had lessons learned on where we put them, right? And we've learned to sort of better mount them, better secure them. We've even had instances where we had an alert and then realized that the grade on the concrete floor had a tilt, I think, of a centimeter or something that was sort of barely noticeable, but of course the water all flowed downhill to the sensor. So the installation is important. The calibration as well, right? And just understanding that it is technology, and you'll get one or two false alarms, not many, but it's just that sort of bedding in process. And for some of those reasons, we start small, one or two buildings, and then expand into into the entire portfolio. And Highwoods that I mentioned at the start is a great case in point, right? We started with them in 5 buildings, and now we're incredibly excited, right? We're expanding into 50 buildings in 7 states. Just getting the kinks out of the system, showing the risk manager there's value to this. And of course, when you get that actionable alert, that's those are the easy ones, right? To help customers through.
Let's just turn a little bit to how Chubb sees it from a business model point of view. So obviously, as you mentioned some things around customer adoption. How does Chubb encourage clients to use these kind of solutions and these sensors? How does the customer see the value in these new tools, or does it require incentives or encouragement?
It's a great question, right? And we're starting sort of down that path, and there are different engagement models. At 30,000 feet, I think a good mental model for framing some of this is, right, when we think about fire, and you think about the extensive underwriting practice and language around fire, and you think about the devices that are in place today, right, to help mitigate fire and underwrite fire, right? You think smoke detectors, sprinkler systems, and these are very much part of the day-to-day and folded into the insurance underwriting and the risk management and the risk engineering. And I think 30,000 feet, right? That's the path that we're on with the water peril, right? In terms of how it should be treated. Now, we're not there yet, but in terms of a mental model, I think that's very much how we're thinking about this. And as you know, Chubb has been an industry leader in offering loss prevention services to customers, help mitigate risks. And we think this area of helping prevent water damage is will be a growing and important part of those prevention service capabilities. And so that sort of explains the acquisition that we made of StreamLabs in 2021. As I said, we're really happy with that. I mean, that's meaningfully expanded the breadth of IoT devices and capabilities that we can bring to our clients. We'll be talking with the client, our risk engineering practice, the underwriting practice, and clearly getting the input from claims. Like to get to our clients before they've had the claim, but sometimes we get the claim and have an understanding that these devices could have potentially helped mitigate, right? So everyone's part of that discussion, right, where it can really help our clients. So we'll meet with the risk manager on site and just really try to understand what makes sense, right, for their particular business, and guide them through the sensor program from start to finish. In terms of the ROI for the client, look, I mean, one loss, right, will pay for the entire program. So from our perspective, it's the economics have been pretty compelling. The average, I think the stats are, the average water damage loss in a commercial building, you're looking at about $100,000, right? So on average, $100,000. And the cost, right, to install and monitor the sensors in a typical building, less than $5,000, right? So, and the $100,000, that's obviously just the monetary amount, doesn't capture all the inconvenience that we mentioned and so on. And of course, the loss could be greater. So, I think $5,000, that's a pretty compelling trade-off, right? And then what we find, right, it's, so you can look at the economics that way, but it sometimes is a more practical ROI, right? The risk manager gets that first alert, right? And they go, okay, this thing works, right? What about the rest of my campus that isn't protected, right? I need to protect the whole thing. So once you start getting into these sort of cycle of alerts, then it sort of feeds on itself pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? Success, nothing breeds success like success. Let me just shift a little bit to Chubb then. Just how do you decided to buy StreamLabs? How do you sort of look at it in terms of your resource usage, right? In terms of sort of keeping the construction and deployment maybe of some of the tools or the efforts in-house versus outsourcing it to tech companies? Just in general, how do you think about that, Sean?
Well, I mean, there's considerable engineering and technical know-how that goes into the sensors and the manufacturing. So the core intellectual capital, and we have a number of patents around the technology we keep in-house. There are certain parts of the manufacturing, right, that we subcontract out. We like to stay close to the technology and so on. So it's all brought together and tested, right, at our facilities. Our software is proprietary, so we own that. So yeah, we like to stay close to the parts that matter, if you will. They're very, very important to us.
Yeah, I always think that if it's a core competence, then it makes you unique and probably not outsource that. So Sean, you've been a prominent advocate of the shift to predict and prevent. What have you learned along the way, and what do you view as sort of the keys to success in this approach?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? And again, I'd frame this from a high level too. When we think about IoT, I think we're all used in when driving, right? The concept of IoT for use-based insurance and to help prevent accidents. You're starting to see it in healthcare, right? And smartwatches, right, to sort of guide people with their activities, or even alert them, right, if there's a health event that could happen. So this idea of IoT starting to sort of help predict and prevent broadly, right? I mean, I think is here. It's only going to accelerate further. So I think there's a significant impact on the insurance industry. And as I mentioned, at the outset, what it does, it gets you to real-time exposure-based thinking around risk prevention and pricing and so on, which I think is incredibly powerful, and it provides the right risk incentives for customers, and it allows insurers to sort of help with mitigation, but also to make sure that pricing is proportionate and relevant to the risk, which I think is fair and it's right. But particularly with the water-based efforts, right? You're in a similar way, right? You're now starting to create data, and you're starting to digitize a physical risk, and it's providing underwriters insights and data, and our clients with the same thing that they just didn't have before. And so, whether it's a commercial or residential building, you can now have a much better sense of the exposure, how to think about mitigating water risk and pricing for that. That just, I think, helps with the coverage and the type of product that we're offering. So I think it's incredibly exciting, and you start to see it broadening, right, from just being property. You think you go into liability and environmental, right, with the type of sensors that are now here. So yeah, I'm very, very optimistic about the application of the technology for our clients and what it means for Chubb and the industry.
Well, thank you, Sean. I really appreciate your time today. Certainly, you've given us sort of a global, if you will, a high-level view of how you see predict and prevent working, and then helped us understand exactly how Chubb looks at this and has implemented it. And as always, Sean, I know I look to you as somebody in the industry who's very forward-looking and very strategic. And I'm really, really grateful for your time today. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure to chat, and always value your help and support. So thank you very much. And hopefully listeners found something in here that is useful for them.
I'm sure they did. I know I did. I want to give a huge thank you to George and Sean for joining me on this episode of Predict and Prevent. It was so great to hear their insider perspectives on how risk managers and insurers can successfully use IoT sensors to protect their companies and customers. And thank you for listening. I hope you learned something new in this episode. Stay tuned for more insightful conversations about the future of risk management and insurance. Predict and Prevent is a podcast brought to you by the Institutes. Subscribe on your preferred listening platform and join us for future episodes where we continue to dig into this approach and the opportunities that come with it.